Hello, welcome once again to Python with Obinkwaju. Today we are looking at lists. Lists are ordered sequence data structure. What this means is that items within a list are sequential and they are in a particular order, a particular distinct order. So list is able to store collection of data types. So within a list, we can save a string, we can save an int or a floating point value. We can even save a dictionary. So in creating a list, we make use of a square bracket, and then we would use a comma to separate each individual object within the list. As I said earlier, it allows indexing and slicing, meaning that we can use indexing to access the individual values within a list, or we can use slicing to access multiple values within a list. And again, they are mutable in the sense that we can update the items within the list after creation. So this is the basic syntax of a list. So we create a list by opening a square bracket, and then we close it with a square bracket. Then we place in our objects or items, and we separate each item with a comma. Now let us jump right into Jupyter Notebooks to really explore this concept. So let's go ahead and then create a list. I'm just gonna call this my list. To create a list, we declare a variable name, a variable that is going to hold a list, and then we go ahead, we bring our assignment operator, and then our square brackets. So I'm just going to create a list of numbers. So just some random numbers. And if I go ahead now and I check the type, we run that and it says a list. So this is a valid list that has been created. So this is just a list containing just one data type. Let's try to create a mixed list. It's going to hold different data structures and data types. And let me say this, it's going to just store information about a singular person, somebody, and maybe the person's name is, let's say Dave, and his age. So I use comma to separate the first value. So we have a string, and I'm using maybe the age is 34. Then maybe his height is 6.7. Favorite food, it's, let's say, rice. And let's try to store another list inside this list. Let me go ahead and let's assume that this person is in a university and therefore is taking some courses. We're just going to create a list, and that list is going to hold the courses that he studied. So let's say the first one is Python, and the next course is SQL, and the last one, let's say, is Power BI. At index position 0, we have Dave. At index position 1, we have that. Position 2, position 3. Now at index position 4, note that this comma is what is separating it. So at the entire index position 4, we have this entire list. If we check our mixed list, we end up getting that. Let's go ahead and then see how we can access items within this list. Just as we did with strings, we are going to employ the same method. So as I said earlier, list allows indexing. So to be able to access a value within a list, we will use the index position. So let's say I would want to access Dave from this list. All I have to do is I'll just call the name of this list, and I open a square bracket, then I pass the index position. The index position for Dave is 0. So if I pass in 0, and I run that, I'm able to access David. If I pass in index position 1, I'll be able to access the second item. If I pass in index position 3, I'll be able to access 0, 1, 2, 3. If I pass index position 4, I'll be able to. So note that we are accessing the entire list that is at the tail end of it. Remember, we can use reverse indexing or negative indexing, and we know that the last item we can also use -1. If you want to reverse, we'll use -1. So if I use -1 and I run, I'm going to retrieve the same thing. Someone may ask, what if we would want to access a particular course within this list? So one way is that you realize that we were able to use index position 1 to access the list. After we've accessed the list, remember in list we use indexing. I can go ahead and then check if let's say I want to access Power BI from this list, then I can go ahead and add that up and say what is the index position for Power BI 0, 1, 2. So if I say 2 and I run, I end up getting this. So what is going on here? We used the name of this list to access the last item, which is -1. After accessing the last item happened to be a list. So what can we do? We can go ahead and use the specific index position of the course that we want. At this time, it is 2 to access that. If I change this to 0, we'll be able to access Python. So that is how we use indexing in accessing items within a list. All right, we are going to look at slicing. Slicing allows us to be able to access multiple items from our list. So I have created this list, so I'll call this list list 2, and in this list I'm storing some string characters. So at index position 0 we have A in that order. So let's go ahead and then see how we can slice multiple items. So say I would want to slice access from A up to D. This is how we do that. I would first of all call the name of the list, then I'll open a square bracket. What is the index position of A? It is 0, so we start at index position 0. And where do we end? So after you specify your start, so basically slicing takes 3 arguments: a start position, end position, and a step position. The step position can be optional. So we start by specifying our start position. So this time, because we are accessing from A to D, A sits at index position 0, so that is where we are starting. And where are we ending? At index position at D. So what is the index position for D? 0, 1, 2, 3. But note that Python, okay, let's go ahead and do that. So I'll just go ahead and say 3. Now, note that we were trying to access up to this point. So what Python does is that the end position is always excluded. So to be able to access this, we would have to end at 4. So it says, okay, extract everything from index position 0 up to index position 4, but exclude the item at index position 4. So we start from here: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, but we exclude the last one, so we end up getting this. If I run it now, we end up getting what we were actually looking for. So we always exclude the item at the very end position. Well, we can go ahead and then remove the start position. When the start position is left blank, it means that, okay, start from the very beginning and extract everything up to this position. So this is the end position we are specifying. If I do this, we are going to get the same result. If I go ahead and remove the end position as well, what it means is that start from the very beginning and end at the very tail end of my list. So if we run this, we expect to get the entire list. All right, let us try another thing. Let's try to access from this D up to H. What is the index position of D? 0, 1, 2, 3. So we are going to start at index position 3. What is the index position of H? So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Remember, the last one would always be excluded. So to get H, we would have to jump one step further. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we'd say from 3 to 8. And when we run that, we end up getting D, E, F, G, and then H. If we go ahead and just specify the start position and leave the end position empty, it says start from index position 3 and extract everything that comes after it. So if I run this, we expect to get from D to the very tail end. All right, so now let's go ahead and then look at the third parameter, that is the step. So I'm just going to say my list, and this time I'm going to specify. So let's say I'm going to extract everything from the beginning of the list to the end. We've already seen this, that is what it means. But this time I'm going to add another parameter. So this is the first, the start is empty, the end is empty, but I'm adding a third parameter and I'm going to say 2. So that is the step. Let us run this and see what happens. Okay, so we realize that we are using a step of 2 after every extraction. So we start from the beginning to the end. We access the first item, then we jump 2 steps, 1, 2 to get C. Then we jump 1, 2 to get E in that order. If I go ahead and I change this to 3 and we run this now, we end up, okay, so after accessing the first item, we jump 1, 2, 3 for the next item, then 1, 2, 3 for the next item. The next jump 1, 2, we've exhausted the length of our list. So that is it. I can go ahead and also say, let's say I would want to extract from this side to that in a certain step. So I can specify and say, okay, start from index position 1, extract everything to the very last. So that's why the end is empty, to the very end of it. Okay, use a step of 3. Let's run this. So you see, we are starting at index position 0, 1. After we extracted B, we jumped how many steps? 3 steps. 1, 2, 3 to extract E. Then we jump 1, 2, 3 to extract each. So that is how we can use slicing. One thing I would want to draw your attention to, there is a nice trick to reverse this list, the items in the list. If you leave the start position blank, the end position blank, and you use a step size of -1. So this is something you just have to remember. If I run this, we are going to be able to reverse this index. Realize that we access this one first, then in this direction from the very last end to the beginning. So we use this trick to reverse list. Now let us look at how we can change items within a list. All right, so we are going to use the same list. I'm going to change B to, let's say I'm going to change A to its actual index position. So you call the name of the list, then you open a square bracket and pass in the index position of the item you want to change. So this time I want to change 0. So I'm just going to say, okay, at index position 0, I want you to go ahead and replace whatever is there with 0. Or let me say index 0. So if I run this and I check my list, you realize that at index position 0, we've replaced it with what? Index 0. Let us try that again. This time around, we are going to replace index position 1. So this particular index position, we are going to replace it. So at index position 1, I am going to assign a new value in there. And I'm just going to say index 1. If I run this and I check my list, you realize that has been replaced. So that is how we can replace items within a list. We can change a range. We can actually replace a range of values or items within this list. So let's try that and see. And we can do that employing slicing. So I'm just going to say, okay, from index position 2, so this is 0, 1. So from index position 2 to index position 4. So I would say, okay, I want to replace everything from index position 2 up to index position 4. Remember, this end is always excluded. So index position 2, 3, 4. So we are going to say to index position 5. Then I would assign, because we are assigning multiple items, we would also use a list the same format. So at index position 2, I'm going to assign index 2. Then the next one, I'll say must be a string, index 3. Then I would say index 4. Now if I go ahead and I run this and I check my list, now you realize that we've been able to replace index 2, 3, 4 with index 2, 3, and 4 respectively. Okay, so let me just go ahead and create another list. I'll just call this list 1. We are going to look at how we can join lists. So I'll just call this list 1, and I'm just going to place in some values in there. So 4, 5, and then I'll create another list. I'll call it list 2, and I'm going to store some numbers. So I'll just continue 6, 7, 8, 9. Wow. So how do we add join list? We use the concatenation and the plus operator. So I'll just say new list. And in this new list, what I'm going to do is I'm going to store my first list plus my second list. If we run this and we check our new list, we end up getting this. So what is happening here? We just pick the first list and then we append the second list to it. Mind you, if I had gone ahead and interchanged the position, what is going to happen is that it's going to pick the first one and then it will append it's going to pick the second one and append the first one to it. So if I run this, this is what I'm going to get. But I would want to stick to the first option. So that is how we join lists. All right, we can also use a method called extend to be able to join two lists. So I'm going to create two new lists. In these two, I'm going to use the extend. So I'll just call the first list and I'll say dot extend. Then I pass in the second list. If I say print list one, we end up getting, so what is going on? We are saying that, okay, pick list one and extend the length of list one using list two. So we pick this list and then we added this. This is an in-place method. So after we pick and extend, it goes ahead and updates the value of list one. So now list one is no longer that, but it's that with this being added to it. All right, so let's go ahead and then look at some inbuilt methods in list. So the first method we look at is the append method. So let me just go ahead and then we are going to use the same list now. So let's just check its content. Let's check that list one. Okay. So I'll say list one and I'll call the method dot append on it. Append adds an element to the end of a list. So if I say dot append 23 and I run this, if I check list one now, you realize that 23 has been added to the end of it. Let me just add another one. Let me append another one. You realize that 67 has been appended to it. Let us look at another method called the insert method. So the insert method allows us to specify the exact position where we would want to place an item. So insert takes into argument. So the first one, we are going to specify the position where we want to place that. So to be obvious, we are going to replace position 0. We are going to change what is here. So I'll call the position first. So at position 0, I would want to insert something new. I would want to insert 100 in there. So let's just go ahead and run that and check our list 1 now and realize that at index position 0, we've inserted 100. Let us try that again. Let's say at index position 1, we would want to also update it by inserting 100. If we run now, realize that index position 0. So what is happening actually is that the insert does not replace the item that is there. It just picks a position, and if there is an item there, it pushes it back. So you realize that 1 is still here, 6 is still there, but it's changed its position to give way for the new insertion. Let's look at the remove. So let's say my list dot remove. So remove actually removes the first occurrence of a specific value from the list. So now we have hundreds, we have 200s in here. So if I pass in remove, what do you want to remove? So pass in the value, what you want to remove from the list. I want to remove 100. If I run that and I check my list 1 now, realize that the first is gone. Let us try it. Let us try to remove 6. Note the position of this. It is as index position 0, 1, 2, 3. So I'm just going to remove the number 6 from this list. And you realize that the first 6 that was in between 1 and 8 is now gone. So that is, if I do it again, it's going to remove the next 6. Now you realize that this 6 is also missing from here. So that is how the remove function works. And we can also, let's look at the pop method. So pop would pop out an item from the list. So you realize that 67 has been popped out. If we go ahead and run again, you realize that that is gone. We can also specify the particular index position of the item we want to pop. So if I say .pop 0, so if I say .pop 0 and we do that, it pops 100 because it is at index position 0. If we check That again, 100 is gone. Let's say we want to use dot count. So let's say list one dot count. So count returns the number of occurrences of a specified value in the list. So if I say dot count and I pass in 8 here, how many 8 are there in this list? 2. So if I say count, it counts and then gives me 8. The last two that I would want us to look at is dot sort. So let's say list dot sort. If I call dot sort on my list and we run this and we check our list now, you realize that it's been sorted from the least to the highest number in an ascending order. So that is what the dot sort does. And dot reverse, let's look at the last one, that is dot reverse. If we say dot reverse, it just gives the opposite of dot sort. So it reverses the order of the number from the biggest to the lowest. So that is that for lists. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and then leave a comment. We'll meet in our next lesson. Have a nice day. Bye bye.